Society. We're glad to have you all here this morning. Are any of you first-time attendees at any of our programs? Oh, okay, great. Well, welcome. If you're not a member of the Edgewater Historical Society and would like to become one, we have an unbelievable deal of $5 first-year dues. And we have membership forms at the back table. See either Marcia or Margie, who just walked in, if you would like to become a member. We also have some giveaways. When you become a member, you'll get our quarterly newsletter that highlights all the great history of Edgewater. We have a couple of spare copies at the back table if you'd like to grab one. We also have some booklets from our past home tours. Has anyone been to one of the EHS home tours? All right, well, they're back, and we have a few extra copies of the booklet from this year's home tour. If you missed it, please help yourself to one at the back. This is the 8th program we've done this year. We had a very busy year with programs. We're still kind of making up for lost time during COVID. But we have a lot of stuff already in the pipeline for next year as well. Our next program will be on January 11th. That's Saturday. That'll be right here at 10:30 start time. Then we have Ed Zadi, better known as Cecil Adams to many longtime Chicago residents. He was the writer of the Straight Dope column in the Chicago Reader. So he'll be talking about demographic changes in Chicago since the last census. So we also have a special holiday program coming up a week from tomorrow, Sunday afternoon at 3?
3 o'clock at the Edge Theater.
3 o'clock at the Edge Theater. One of our great benefactors in recent years has underwritten a holiday concert. Tickets are available. How much are the tickets, Margie?
$15, kids are free, and it's kind of just a non-denominational fun Christmas music.
Non-denominational holiday music. So we hope you'll join us for that program. Again, that's going to be at the Edge Theater a week from tomorrow at 3 o'clock. We're always looking for new members, new energy in the Historical Society. If you have any ideas for programs you'd like to see us address, feel free to send us suggestions on our website, edgewaterhistory.org. And without further ado, I want to get into today's program. We have a lot to share with you today, so I'll be presenting with my fellow board member, Thom Greene. How many of you don't know who Thom Greene is? Okay. Well, Thom probably has done more for the beautification of Edgewater than any other single individual. There are a lot of people involved, but Thom really, he's had an outsized role in restoring a lot of the beautiful buildings in Edgewater, including some along on Broadway that we'll be talking about. Also just general beautification efforts throughout the ward, greening the ward, getting more tree infrastructure and public gardens and so forth. How many of you remember what Broadway was like 20, 30 years ago? It was a dump. We have some pictures, we have on the back table as well, a lot of photos of Broadway and the commercial streets that intersect with it, like Thorndale and Granville. It was a really, really rough street. There was not a lot of great activity going on. There was just mainly car repair places and a lot of dodgy cell phone type businesses and things like that. Also had a lot of plastic bags hanging in the trees and other signs of urban chaos. So I'll leave these out for after the talk. There are also some at the back. So also just want to note that a lot of the photos that we'll be talking about today are also on display here at the library for probably a couple more months, and we'll have to move them. Are there any empty seats? We got a couple people standing. So we have a couple. We have some extra chairs over in the corner there, and then there are a couple of empty seats up here as well. So. I just want to introduce the program by saying this is really just kind of the end result of an exhaustive initiative we undertook at the Edgewater Historical Society back around 2018. to talk to you about it. We're not that old.
How old is that?
So, you know, Broadway I think is like underappreciated in a lot of ways compared to especially Clark Street. Seems to get all the love in Edgewater, but Broadway is certainly a very architecturally noteworthy street in its own right, although it hasn't always been appreciated as such. The city is in the process of upzoning Broadway. We don't know exactly what that means. There's going to be a community meeting on that a week from Monday at 6 o'clock at the Farama restaurant down near Asia on Argyle. The city is going to be putting out new guidelines on zoning and so forth, so that might have a big impact on the street going forward. We don't oppose change. We think there are good ways of doing additional densification and so forth, but we're really hoping that in the process we don't lose a lot of the buildings that really make this a unique street. We have a couple of extra chairs up here as well, if anyone wants to grab those. So with that, Thom really spearheaded this effort, working with a couple of other board members at EHS, especially Marcia Holland, and Bob Reamer was involved as well. So we wrapped this up more or less right around the time that COVID was coming down the pike. So we did have a series of stakeholder meetings. We met with the then aldermen and chamber officials and anyone else who we could corral and buttonhole. But really, I think now with the potential changes coming to the street is a good time to really put more of a spotlight on the effort. So without further ado, let Thom come in and start making a few comments as well.
Yeah, I guess we'll really start with the first slide, John.
All right.
Really take a look at that. I mean, I'm really here to sort of critique the architecture, good and bad, on the street. So if any building owners are here, I hope I get in trouble for it.
Douse the lights.
We can take the lights down at this point as well.
Here it is here. So there's been a lot of studies done on Broadway over the years. This is a study that Marianne Smith did probably maybe 30 years ago for another task force on Broadway Avenue. And this course went from all the way from the Uptown Theater all the way to Nirvana. This was a major study she did, getting community members involved to really look at Broadway. But here we go, study after study after study, and we have lost almost 50% of the historic buildings on Broadway over this time period. Oh, it's a little different. I wanted to sort of look at the whole area of Edgewater first, to really look at the historic districts. The Bryn Mawr Historic District, the first one, Commercial National Historic District, Bryn Mawr Avenue. And then the next one was Lakewood Balmoral Residential Historic District. And then the Andersonville Commercial Historic District. Those are our three national historic districts. But soon to be, up in Edgewater Glen, up here, is going to be another residential national historic district in the Edgewater Glen. So we'll have 4 national historic districts in Edgewater, which is great. They're not city landmark districts, which has a lot of teeth to it. National historic districts don't have much teeth to really preserve the demolition of buildings. But as you can see on Broadway Avenue here, this also shows orange-rated buildings. All these are our orange-rated buildings that you can see here all over Edgewater. Orange-rated buildings was a study the city did in the mid-'80s that studied and looked at significant historic structures throughout all of Chicago, and we have some, I don't know what the number is, we have many orange-rated historic buildings. And orange-rated basically means they're significant, and there's a 90-day demolition hold on them if someone wants to tear them down. It doesn't really have too much teeth. We really should have that whole survey done again. They missed many orange-rated buildings in our area that they should really have.
That survey that Tom's referring to was commissioned by Mayor Washington, so that's going back quite a ways at this point.
And so you can see some of these up at Devon here. You can see some of the orange-rated buildings on Broadway. There is one national building on the city landmark register on Broadway Avenue, and that is the Broadway Bank Building.
The Riviera Motors building. How many people don't remember it as the Broadway Bank building? That's already getting to be ancient history.
And that's what these stars represent. City landmark buildings are the stars.
And we couldn't fit the whole map of Edgewater on this slide, so we apologize for that. So what we're going to do today is just kind of walk through some of the highlights of the reports, and starting at the south at Foster and working our way all the way up to Devon. There are additional chairs up in the front here if you want to come through. This is a very lovely building. I don't know if Tom was aware of this, but I had a neighbor in Uptown who owned it at one point. He was one of those rapacious developer types who didn't mind knocking down old beautiful buildings to make a quick buck. He went belly up in the financial crash, so he never got around to messing with this building. So luckily we still have it. And I just want to show you a sample page of what we have in our report here. So this is the result of all the legwork that our various volunteers did to put together this booklet. By the way, the book, the entire survey is available on our website. Right now there's on our homepage at edgewaterhistory.org is a link to today's program, and then on the program flyer there's a link to the study. We'll have the study itself linked to the homepage soon. So, but in any event, this is a very handsome but not extraordinary building, but it sets a really nice kind of anchor for that corner. I think one of the guiding principles in quality urban design is having a well-defined street wall, as it were, with buildings kind of forming the walls of the room, as it were. So this is kind of one of the first things you see.
Our first orange-rated building on the tour here.
It is.
Because of its unique brickwork, and we almost lost this building a couple decades ago when the developer was doing the whole strip mall behind it there. They wanted to tear this building down, and through Mary Ann Smith and the community, we helped save and preserve this building on the corner here, which is great because it anchors. It's the lead entrance into our Edgewater community.
And it's the only one of the four corners at that intersection of Foster and Broadway that has the original building there. So let's just look at something that we've lost.
This is the opposite corner, right at Foster and Broadway here. This is the Fanning Cadillac building, was the Cadillac distributorship and showroom. And of course, this was sort of a motor row back then. All of Broadway was really a motor row. And we tried to really save this building, but unfortunately we lost it. It would have been a great rehab into condos and really anchoring the corner of Edgewater. It was built in, I believe, 1919. Beautiful building, would have been a great thing to save and recycle and repurpose. But
instead it was replaced by this, which is really a sad step down, and an underutilization of the land for sure. So.
Well, you can see they did a little detail on the planter with some of the tiles.
Tom especially was successful in getting a few bones thrown in by some of these developers. Most significantly at the Walgreens up at Ridge. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So, no need to dwell on this eyesore for too long. So again, we're just working our way up a bit. So this is the very lovely corner building at the southwest corner of Berwyn and Broadway. We have a new coffee shop that's anchoring that corner. It's great to have something back in there after the COVID meltdown, but it's a very typical vernacular built style building from the boom years of Edgewater. It's got commercial on the first floor and two floors of residential above it. A very typical design motif and form back in the day. So this has really been kept up nicely. A lot of detailed, beautiful terracotta that's been more or less well maintained. A lot of thriving businesses in here, including that music studio of one of our living treasures, Jim Ginsburg. So a lot of great stuff has happened in this building.
1920s building, beautiful terracotta work. There used to be some finials on the top of it, beautiful little finials going up on all these pieces. And I, of course, had my office in this building for almost 30 years. And one day I came to work and saw all of them in a dumpster out front.
Oh, no.
Because the owner was worried they were going to fall off the building, wasn't taking care of it, worried these finials up on the top, they were going to fall off, so he had someone pull them all off, unfortunately.
They could be a serious hazard if the tornado hit.
Right, but he could have secured them. But I know his point, but that's the loss we're going to have. But beautiful detail, I mean, there's these cartouches, and it's called the Davis Building historically. And all these buildings have a really history behind them. Marcia did so much of the research on these, just the history behind this building and how it got built, and the woman that was involved in it, the husband and everything of them in Evanston and all this. They have so much history to how they got built versus today, a developer comes in, gets an architect, and then the building's done, and there's no real history to the building and of some of these. And it's just sad. And who even puts this kind of detail in a building today? Nobody, not even close.
There was obviously pride of ownership, and they put their name on the building itself. So
Right.
you'll see that in a number of buildings up and down Broadway. So just a little more detail on the great terracotta there. This is the kind of stuff they'll never replicate again. So that's why it's so important not to lose these things. So just a little further north, again, talking about some of the underutilized land. This is the Jewel food store, which runs north from Berwyn on the east side of Broadway. Obviously, we need to have grocery stores. We have two major grocery stores along Broadway, as well as some smaller bodegas. But this was not, this was a coal yard back in the day before the grocery store went in there. We didn't really lose anything right here. Right across, just across the street on Berwyn, we did lose a number of small, nicer commercial buildings for that strip mall that used to be anchored at the corner with this rather banal commercial structure, which itself has succumbed to the wrecker's ball. We're not exactly sure what's going to happen at that corner.
Fortunately, that's down now, and it's good to anchor the corner, but even the new development, there's just basically remodeling the strip mall. Even the new development, there's just going to be a little structure at the corner. I mean, it's probably a quarter of that size, unfortunately, because you really have to anchor the corners in an urban environment like this.
And this is obviously just west of where the new Berwyn CTA station is being built. So there should be a lot more foot traffic over there coming soon. Again, just kind of randomly moving north and showing some of the buildings, not over the top remarkable, but very nice in their own right. These are on the east side of Broadway on the 5300 block. Pearl's restaurant, especially, it's not Pearl's any longer, but it's a very quaint facade on the place. The building next door also has a lot of, to the north of it has a lot of nice terracotta decorative work as well.
But that's a good example, the Pearls building, when they renovated this into Pearls, they tore down everything in the back. It was gutted except for that lime, so it was painted black. It's a limestone facade. They kept that facade and demoed everything in the back, built the second floor because it was a beautiful little bar and up on the top floor. But they at least saved the facade and restored it, kept the character of it, because that's about 1908, and some of these are just a little more later in 1920s. But it's just that detail on that massing that makes it have the feel of a small neighborhood walkable area.
There's a term called facadectomy. It's a derisive term used in architectural circles to kind of run down the idea of just saving the front of a building. But I think in our estimations, saving the facade is a half loaf compared to losing the whole loaf.
Right, but what about painting it black?
This mania for all things black and white or gray.
Could have been worse, could have been white. So.
I think it's largely being fed by the Scandinavian furniture company that shall remain nameless. That's kind of pushing this whole concept. I think earth tones are verboten. So. But it's mainly, we're seeing a lot of this happening on residential buildings, which maybe that's another program, but it's not good for the buildings physically. I guess the aesthetics are up for debate. There's just another view of it. So Tom, is that second floor? Can you kind of see the
Yeah,
back,
on the top
back
there,
end
this
of it
little
there?
bar,
Yeah.
and there's seating at the top. It's a great little view, looking east towards the L train going by. It's a great little view from up on top there.
What's the current restaurant in here now? Does anyone?
It's Ethiopian.
It's another Ethiopian restaurant now. So there's that building just to the north of it, so giving you again a nice corner view. So the beauty of these buildings is that they really help integrate the residential areas into the commercial district. So they visually align with both streets, obviously. Many of them, and we'll get to a few, have these curved corner facades, which really kind of help smooth the transition from one street to another, as it were. Just a little more of the detail on that building. Again, it's not the kind of building anyone would go out of their way to look at, but if you stop and take it in, you're like, wow, someone put some effort into that.
All glazed terracotta from a company. There are several companies in the United States that actually produce glazed terracotta, and architects would basically go to their catalog and pick out molded pieces and just work them into their building. Rarely were they totally designed specifically for that building. Only when Louis Sullivan was doing terracotta work with a Louis Sullivan designs versus these coming out of catalogs.
And a lot of the catalog stuff was either inspired or directly ripped off from Louis Sullivan. Louis Sullivan never got a nickel out of any of this work, and one of the reasons why he died penniless. So this is just a little further north, and this is one of these curved facade corners that I just referenced. So this is Burkes Public House. I think they did a really nice job with the entryway and the coloring on the ground floor there. This was originally a tire retail shop. So again, another harkening back to Broadway's role as the North Side motor roll through the teens, 20s, and 30s.
And you can see the evolution from this building being around 1908, 1909, and just limestone and brick details, where the one you just saw was a lot more terracotta and very detailed, and that's now in the 20s. So we just went from that sort of simpler turn of the century to the 1920s when we started to get into a lot more detail on buildings.
So very nice brickwork here. Dentaling on the lower levels, not something you see very often.
And notice on a couple places,
They still have,
like in the doors, there's 2 levels of dental molding.
Yeah.
At the edge of the awning in the front.
And coining, that's sort of an
Coining,
abstraction.
and they also have the
High
limestone parapet intact, which is great to see. And here's the little write-up we have in our survey on that. So built in 1911. Joseph Miller was the architect. The Berry Tire Company was the first commercial occupant. So I'll trade a pub for a tire company any day. There's the one of the entryways to the the residential flats on the upper floors. Again, this one's a relatively modest structure on the 400 block of Broadway. It's got the, I don't know if this is an original facade, Tom, you think so?
I could talk about this one because I did it.
Oh, okay, well there we go.
The whole facade on this building was crumbling, and the stucco on it was in bad repair, and the owner, Andersonville Physical Therapy, hired me to recreate the facade of the building. So I took some notes from the original, some of this corbelling here, but I added some other details at top, did a little breakup of the parapet, added some of these precast, these aren't terracotta, but precast ornamentation to the building, and just try to bring it back to the character and detail that it was. And this is what everyone should be doing with these buildings here, to really bring it back. Most people, like John, well, it looks like an old building. No, it's a new one. I did this probably maybe 10 years ago.
Okay. And how much of the character of the facade is original to the building?
Some of this corbel work I kept,
Okay.
and these details weren't there, but there was a little articulated parapet on it, so I kept some of them, and I tried to embellish it a little more too.
A very handsome effort. Congratulations.
And again, these are all out of a catalog,
Uh-huh.
precast concrete that I picked out of a catalog to put on the building.
Continuing our march north, we're now at the corner of Catalpa and Broadway, just across the street from St. Ida's. Again, another relatively toned down but charming building. Has the nice parapet up at the top. It's still intact with this unusual bracketing and the interesting roof line. They give it a lot of character.
Fortunately, this is a limestone cornice. And a lot of buildings have cornices, and later on they were built out of galvanized metal. And unfortunately, we're losing a lot of those cornices because they're getting rusted and they're falling off, and the owner takes them off. In some buildings, you can see that it's just a parched area where they took the cornice off. But this is really important in architecture, to have a base, a middle, and a cap to every building. You really want to define the ends of the building.
They're using the limestone so often in the early 1900s?
I don't know, I guess maybe it was a lot cheaper than terracotta back then. I don't know why they would use limestone. It was the only way to really embellish a building with limestone, and to create that contrast between brick and the limestone to really let them stand out. And it was, of course, from Indiana limestone, so it was close.
It's, I'm not sure if this is another relatively modest but nicely proportioned and symmetrical commercial building. This archway over here, I'm not sure if that's that corrugated metal that Tom was just talking about, or painted limestone. I suspect it's metal.
Yeah, that's probably
So there was some effort in maintaining and possibly restoring that feature. I don't know, Tom, do you recall when buildings like this started getting spiffed up a bit? Was it back in the 90s most likely?
Yeah, the 90s and 2000s. A nice little touch with the little arch there. It breaks the whole building up, gives a little lyrical feel to it, and gives a curve into the geometry. So it's a nice touch. Unfortunately, it's white, which is a real problem in Chicago. A lot of people are painting beautiful brick buildings white, losing all the character and patina over the years. You've seen them on the internet.
And then kind of the major anchor on this stretch of Broadway is the very imposing St. Ida's French Gothic style church at Catalpa and Broadway, designed by Henry Schlacks. It's got a lot of character and characters to it, including this gargoyle here that looks like it would be right at home at Notre Dame. So it's a very significant structure. Went up, I think, in 1922.
22, right. What you'd think it would be older than 1922.
Yeah.
But they did a great job. Beautiful detail. When Mayor Daley and Mary Ann Smith went through the neighborhood, Mayor Daley looked at this building and thought, why aren't we lighting this building up at night? It should be lit. It's a beautiful building. Called the electrical department, the city, and they put a floodlight on this pole here, and now the building is lit up at night because he cared about the architecture and lighting it up.
What corner is it?
What?
It's Catalpa.
Catalpa Broadway.
So a lot of significant happenings here. George Hallis's funeral was held at this church. Of course, he lived a couple blocks away at the Edgewater Beach Apartments. Former Mayor Kennelly also had his funeral here. Well, closer to home, Elston.
Mayor Devers' funeral too.
Mayor Devers. So we've had two Chicago mayors and maybe one of the most famous Chicagoans of all time had their funerals at this church. So it seems to be holding up. One of these days I got a vague promise out of one of the priests over there to get up to the bell tower. They said for insurance reasons they have to think about that one. So one of these days. But beautiful facade on the church. Henry Schlacks was probably the most prolific of the architects doing work for the Chicago Archdiocese. His eternal resting place is at St. Boniface Cemetery over at Clark and Lawrence. You want to talk about this one, Tom?
Yeah, this is what was originally the Edgewater Savings and Loan Bank. Beautiful little jewel building. It's tough to see the detail. A beautiful little jewel building that's now a temple. but I'm glad it's saved. It's small scale, incredible detail on it. It's just a little jewel in our neighborhood. And some might say, geez, it's only a one-story. We really need more massing on the street because a one-story shouldn't be on a street like this. But you know, these are little jewel boxes that really create the character.
One thing to note, there is obviously a lot of density in this area if it's not right on Broadway, but just behind Broadway is the very massive condo building that went up in the 90s, just west of the L tracks there, running north from Catalpa. So that's probably several hundred residential units there. So really to put anything much denser right